Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. So tonight's video is going to be a little bit different, well, because I can, basically. Yeah, you can read the title of the video. You know this one's not going to have anything to do, well, not totally, nothing, but this isn't a chainsaw repair video. Today would have been my dad's 88th birthday. He was born in 1937. April 4th. So, yeah. God, that's just... It seems like so long ago, but it doesn't. Not that I was around in 37, but you know, you do that math. You look at those memes on Facebook of 20-year-old truck in my mind and 20-year-old truck in reality, and you go, oh, shit. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about my dad on his birthday, and I'm going to drink what was one of his favorite beers when he chose to have one. Also my favorite, Old Henry Weinhard's, even though they're not bottled by Weinhard's anymore. What's the name of it? Hop Valley Brewing out of Eugene picked up the formula, and they still make it taste pretty good. Oh, on a Friday night, damn, that's good. All right, like I say, April 4th, 1937, he was born. First years of his life were spent in the Bay Area. As I recall what he talked to me about, his dad, my grandfather, was in the shipyards during World War II over in the Bay Area. And I cannot remember why my grandfather couldn't serve in active service overseas. I don't remember what injury or condition he had, but he was a damn good welder, damn good fabricator. So that was how he served the nation. So yeah, once World War II was over, they moved to a piece of property in Turlock, California, that's where I was born and grew up initially. So that's where my dad grew up. Of course, Turlock in, what would that be, the 40s and, I guess early 50s, was a hell of a lot different than what it is right now. I've never been back. We left there in 1990. I've never been back. There's no reason. I don't care. Yeah. But for him, what he would describe, where I saw a city park and apartments and a trailer park and all this other stuff, was just a grass field where he'd go hunt pheasants and stuff like that. So it was a 2-acre chunk of property, and the town kind of grew around it. We see that happen all the time, all over America. It's a very common thing. But it was a neat place for me to grow up initially. Every kind of fruit tree that would grow in California damn near was on that property. There was a give or take, I'm going to say 1.25 acres of almond orchard. Maybe it was just 1 acre. Again, I'm thinking back from a 5 to 10 year old's mind, and not only has that been a while ago, but things look different through those eyes. So yeah, it was even though we were in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley, Stanislaus County, just in the middle of it, it was a little bit different. It wasn't rural, but I was able to experience something different than the kids that I went to school with. So that was pretty cool. What am I trying to say? He was excellent at fixing stuff, and even if he didn't know much about it, he was good about taking it apart and figuring out, oh crap, that's what's broken, that's what needs to be repaired. And again, he comes by that honestly. His dad, obviously, being working in the shipyards, that was just a thing. Mechanical ability was a thing. So yeah, guess I'll try to be somewhat linear about this and not jump all over the place. When he got done with high school, at that time, there was still mandatory service for men in the United States. You had to serve a period in the military. He was lucky. He would have served in between Korea and Vietnam, so actually he was really damn lucky to not have to be deployed in one of those. So So he was a communication specialist in the Air Force and spent most of his time in Germany, Ramstein. He was at Ramstein most of the time. So that was an experience. He talked a little bit about being over in Europe and some of the things that happened, and obviously drinking beer instead of water, and just all the fun little stories, and people that you meet, cars that you own. It's amazing guys that were in the service could, on whatever they were getting, paid, they could buy a car over there, and then when they were leaving, just sell it, and it was fine. Can you imagine doing that now? I can't. I don't think it would work. So anyway, when he came back to the U.S. after that deployment, he went to work for Western Electric. And Western Electric would have been I don't know enough about it, honestly. I probably should have Googled it. They were in that area of California. They were the telephone service. Okay. Eventually, AT&T bought that. I don't know when. Couldn't begin to tell you. But he went to work for them and just kind of, worked his way up through the ranks. He was initially living in Sacramento and working for Western Electric. When my grandfather, moved to Arizona, that would have been after my dad's mom passed away. He didn't talk about that a whole lot for obvious reasons. It wasn't a happy topic for him. But the impression I always got was it was I believe it was a type of cancer, and they raised baby's breath on that chunk of property for quite a while. That was how his mom had a little extra spending money, and some of the chemicals that they used to control, pests on that baby's breath were later found to be extremely carcinogenic, and it's an old story, unfortunately. Anyway, I don't believe it was very long after she passed away that my grandfather had remarried and ended up moving to Tucson, Arizona, and bought the place in Turlock from him. So, moved down there, and yeah, at that period in his life, he was married and then divorced. That wasn't something he really wanted to talk much about. Don't blame him. The marriage didn't last all that terribly long. So he had a period in his 30s where he did all the guy stuff. And we're talking the cool guy stuff. He had a 63 split window Corvette, bought it brand new off the lot, and had a hell of a lot of fun with that car. Of all of the stories that I heard, I'm sure there's about 100,000 that I didn't hear on that. But his favorite, and I have no reason to believe that he was lying, none whatsoever. He was in the desert of Nevada, and I guess one of the highway patrol out there, I don't know how fast he was cruising along, but one of the highway patrol apparently pulled up next to him in some sort of appropriate car for that era and wanted to race him. Okay. Well, apparently at the end of that race, the only reason they quit was the cop's car was blowing some sort of horrendous smoke and had done bad things to his engine. Naturally, I don't think my dad stopped to, not the way he told the story. But anyway, he had that Corvette. He had a Sanger speedboat that he built. He bought the hull and a trailer kit and then a V-drive, and he built the rest of it right there at that garage in Turlock. I found a few, I don't remember who found them as we were going through stuff after he had passed away. We found pictures of of that engine and engine parts and the V-drive in the living room of the old house down there as he was putting it together. So the engine that he bought, and I did find, I think I found a receipt for that, and I don't know where I put it. LS6 from a Chevy dealer there in Sacramento. He bought a freaking LS6 454 and built it to put in this freaking boat. It was, I want to say $1,200 back when he bought it. It would have been the early 70s. Where you could get those as a crate engine, and it was the LS6, that one. And I know he had fun with it, but it didn't last that long because unleaded gas was coming along, and the high octane fuel that those things needed to run you couldn't get for all that long. And I believe it was 1977 he was on Turlock Lake, a lower water year, and there was somebody had thrown a couple concrete blocks off to the side of the ramp. I don't know if they'd gotten their trailer off of it or whatever, but he was coming into shore and he had turned it off, and the thing started dieseling because of that low octane gas, and he couldn't get the damn thing to shut off, and the prop hit one of those chunks of concrete and it sheared the prop pin, broke the prop guard, and of course the prop was mangled, and he never fixed it. That stupid dang boat sat and basically went to hell over the next 30 years. He never ran that thing again, and that engine, I know it was garbage by the time it went away because the covers over the carburetors, it was a dual quad, 2 Carter AFBs on this giant tunnel ram manifold. The exhaust headers were nothing but stacks that came up, collectors, and then came out the back, had water injection to cool the exhaust and the flames. And I mean, I can only imagine what driving that thing was like. He said he got it about to 60, and that was as fast as he dared take it because the front end started getting light and doing that. And we've all seen videos of. So thankfully he didn't do that. Otherwise I wouldn't be around. Because it was about that time that he would have been meeting my mom. He had a Harley at that point. I want to say it was a 77 Softail, but beyond that, can't tell you. He had gotten into that. So I'm saying he did the guy stuff. In the 70s, he was a certified bachelor, with all the toys and all that sort of stuff. The job was good enough that he could do that. So I was always a year off and that was intentional by my folks as to when they met. Just because of the time and all of that. So my mom comes from southwestern Pennsylvania, and her story is unique. I'll go into that one some other time because that's a whole different story. She ended up via Florida and a few other places, ended up in Turlock working at a cafe just down the street from where the old place was. And so my dad would go in there to grab a bite to eat. She ended up being his waitress. And I guess one of her ways of flirting with him was to fill the coffee cup, right up to the brim, so he'd try and take a sip and spill it on himself. And later on she joked, and I don't think she was joking, that he was one of the worst tippers she had ever had. And I'm like, well, all right, I can probably see that, but so they got married in 1979. The story they always told us was 1978 because I was born in November of 1979, but they got married in June of 1979, I believe June 2nd. So I was already on the way, and I think the story had a lot to do with just, family dynamics and all that kind of stuff. When I didn't find out about that until, I don't know, maybe a week or two after Pop had passed away, and Mom told me that, and she said, well, we didn't want you guys to feel. I'm like, feel what? It is what it is. You guys were in love, you got married. I'm not judging that. And anybody who wants to, don't leave a comment because I don't want to hear it. But anyway, yeah, so they got together. I came along in 79. My sister came along in 81. So yeah, we were just living there in Turlock. While we were there, we took some really neat trips. We got to see a lot of the Mojave Desert, Red Rock Canyon, down by Mojave itself. We went down to Organ Pipe a number of times in southern Arizona. We went to Tucson at least once, maybe twice, to visit my grandfather, but that was never... as a kid, you always want to see your grandpa, but he and my dad never really got along that well. My dad referred to him as a shit stirrer, which that's fairly self-explanatory, and his second wife wasn't really the most pleasant person. So, family dynamics get weird. They just do. Anyhow, we would go up into the Sierras, Dardanelle, the Stanislaus River, up to the headwaters up there, Twain Harte. We'd come up here to Oregon. We would stay in Bandon. We'd camp along the way here in Rogue River. Went all the way up to Tillamook a few times, Fort Stevens, just all over the place. It was fun. The camping trips that we would go on, I remember a lot of those very clearly. They were a hell of a lot of fun. He was able to retire from what was then AT&T in 1987, and that worked out okay for a while. We were doing fine down there in Turlock. 89, 90, they were serious about, nah, we're getting out of here. Just tired of California, tired of smog, all of it. And they really wanted to move to Bandon, and I didn't oppose that at all. My sister wasn't as much for it. Just, one of those things. So in October of 1990, we started moving, and that entire month we took off from school, and yeah, we made 3 trips with the big U-Haul trucks, and then trailers of crap behind the old Chevy, the old 65, back when it was brown and white still. Moving up there, and we got that place in Bandon, little shy of 4 acres, beautiful, cedar, fir, pine, nice garden plot. It was really, really cool. It really suited what I think my folks wanted at that time, and that's good because they were there for 30 years, so nothing wrong with that. Would have been 6th grade for me. That was a little tough coming into the middle of a year. Small towns have cliques, you get it. It is what it is. I didn't have a problem with it. I was always kind of a loner, and I think that probably worried my folks a little bit, but I just didn't care. If someone wanted to be friends, great. If they didn't, F it. I'll go out to the woods and work on a kid's log cabin or a fort or something. I could care less. So yeah, that when we got to Bandon, that's when I was old enough to really start gleaning some of his knowledge. We rebuilt a 305 for the old pickup. We went through numerous repairs on the tractor. I fixed my first chainsaw in Bandon. That was that Mini Mac 35 that he had thrown on the shelf all those years ago, and he helped me with that. He let me run with it as far as I could, and then when I needed help with various stuff, he helped me. I had worked on stuff with him from the time I was a year and a half. There's a photo of me sitting on his lap working on one of his ham radio antennas. I think it was a 6-meter boom that he was working on, and a year and a half he's teaching me how to ratchet. He was very patient with teaching that kind of stuff, really patient. So, like I say, that's where I got a lot of my knowledge from, or at least the basis of a lot of the things that I've done was working on that kind of stuff. But the old cars, whether it was replacing a starter or some air injection manifold on the old Dodge Aspen, carburetor work on a Pontiac Parisienne, just all that kind of stuff. A lot of work on the old Chevy. There wasn't a lot of money, that the interest rates that banks were paying on savings accounts kind of bottomed out there around 1990, and the extra money that they had from the sale of the place in California, and what was left over, initially they thought, well, heck, we'll be able to live on the interest of this. And it didn't work for all that long, not too many years. So money was pretty tight, so some of the repairs were pretty basic and hillbilly, if you want to call it that. But it got the job done. So eventually my mom decided that she was going to get her real estate license, and had a career in real estate over there for, I want to say close to, I want to say it was close to 20 years. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. She did the self-study courses, took the test, and worked for people for a while, and then opened her own office. So that that really allowed the second half of their marriage to be a lot more comfortable than what kind of what it was trending in terms of finances, because you got to have some money to do certain things. So he finally bought himself a new truck in 2001. I would have been in college at that point, almost finished with college. So yeah, I had that Impala. I bought that when I was 16, so that would have been 96-ish. 77 Impala, fire engine red. I'm pretty sure it had been a fire chief's car. 350, turbo 350 transmission. Nothing special, but hey, it was my first car. I think it was $525, and 6 months into ownership of that thing, the transmission blew. God. So they fronted. They paid for that. They paid for the rebuild on that. Most of the rest of the time, I was able to pay the insurance and gas, and because that was pretty much the, hey, if you're gonna have a car, here are the responsibilities with it. If I was ever in deep doo doo, obviously they were gonna help, but that was a learning point. You pay to play. And that's something I try to teach my kids now. So yeah, I took that car to college in '97. And thankfully, financial aid, even though the second 2 years it wasn't as good, I was able to get a lot of grants. And what I didn't get in grants and scholarships, the loans weren't terrible. And I'm proud to say I paid those off in less than 15 years. And there was no loan forgiveness or anything like that. I just paid the damn things off. And it served me well. But obviously they helped a tremendous amount to get me through that. So I met my wife in 1999 in the res halls there, the ones we just tore down. And yeah, I think the last time, growing up, you always have some challenges. My early teenage years, I got in not trouble, but the smart ass, the various things that, young guys can get into. And so Pop and I had a few fairly serious sit downs, whether it was concerning how to respect women, controlling your temper, because the Crouch side of the family has a notorious bad temper. And it didn't stop with him, I can assure you of that. But he recognized it and tried to control it, and was very vocal with me about, hey, you inherited this and you need to learn to control it as well, because it'll get you in a hell of a lot of trouble. And I know that even though he didn't go into instances, I know he was thinking about situations that he was in that, could relate. So, anyhow, yeah. The last time that I can actually remember having a heated conversation with him, I don't know that it was a full-on argument, but I was, I think, 20, maybe 21. We had our own apartment here in Talent at that point, and we were having some sort of a discussion about when accepting financial help from family was appropriate and when it wasn't, and what conditions come with that, and how you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and make your own decisions and not be at the mercy of somebody else. And like I say, it was an animated conversation. I don't think he was actually totally pissed, but he wanted to get his point across. And he did. He did. That was something that I filed away in the old memory bank and never forgot to this day. So that, I want to say it was 1996. We started what would become mostly an annual tradition of camping in the summer. It started off as just a few nights up at Florence at Honeyman State Park. Back then they were still putting trout in Woahink Lake on the east side of Highway 101. So we had a crummy old boat. That thing was in bad shape. That thing was, 30 some years old at that point and barely running, but it was enough to get us out on the lake. We took the old comfort trailer, travel trailer, behind one rig, the boat behind the other. We camped up there. We scraped, the bottom of the barrel. The cash that either one of us had to make those first couple happen. But you know what? We got it done. And college naturally, kind of interrupted that cycle a little bit. But once I got my job at SOU, in early 2002, restarted that cycle. And we missed a few years, especially when the kids were first born, but not very many. Not very many at all. We did a lot of camping on the Upper Rogue, Hammaker. If any of you guys are around this area, you know it's no longer a recognized campground, but you can still get there. Great trout fishing up there. Stalkers, but still. Every once in a while they would put some trophy in there, and I caught a couple big rainbows that, oh man, those felt really good on my lightweight rod. So, did a lot of fishing up there. I found a beautiful spot in the Ochicos, which are east of Prineville, center part of the state. In fact, we'll be going there this summer again. Spent a number of trips up there. In fact, the last camping trip that he and I were on was up at that lake. So yeah, that time period, 99, 2000, 2001. So what would he be, 64 when I graduated? Yeah, that sounds right. I think he would have been 64. So, his bad back, all the other things he had put his body through were starting to take a toll at that time. And I started trying to pick up more and more of what I could do to help them out on the coast. Head over every 2 or 3 weekends. I tried to. Sometimes it was 4 or 5 in between, but, especially in the summer, I started cutting firewood down here and hauling it over there to fill their bin. Their woodshed, where we couldn't fill it with stuff that had died there on the property. There was always a dead cedar or two, maybe a madrone here or there, but it got to a point where more and more wood was needed from over here, so I'd haul a cord over at a time, and by God, we get that woodshed filled pretty quick. It got to where I would head over to till the garden up in the spring to get all that prepped for him. Yeah, where I could, I'd weed whack a little bit and help him out. But that was one task he didn't mind. And he had a little curved shaft trimmer. He didn't care how long it took him. He'd weed whack until he was tired and say, screw it, I'll do it another day. So yeah, that from 2001 to, I would say, about 2018, that was kind of the routine. And then, in 2018, Mom really started talking to him about, hey, we're getting older. We need to be closer to better medical facilities. We cannot take care of 4 acres of coastal woods. It's just not practical. And initially, he dug his heels in a lot. He did not want anything to do with moving into the Rogue Valley. I mean, I don't blame him. I understand that. Especially when you've had that, to have to give it up and come back to civilization, if we're going to call it that. So they looked at properties initially really on the outskirts. I mean, out close to where we were camping last weekend, out on River Road out by Merlin. They were looking at some chunks of property, and nothing really quite fit. And, it's like, geez, okay. This is kind of odd. So they gave up the search, took the house in Bandon off the market, and we chatted about stuff through the winter of 18 and into early 2019, and then summer of 2019 we went camping. I want to say it was in mid to late July over there into the Ochicos. We had a lot of those camping trips. We had a lot of serious conversations. We had a lot of fun too, and we acted like crude assholes. To be real blunt about it, we would laugh, joke, the most inappropriate crap you can possibly think of. We were telling jokes and just whatever, having fun. It was a lot of fun. But we would talk about a lot of serious stuff too. And that year, the serious stuff was the moving. And he brought it up. I didn't bring it up. I don't know. That if there was something serious to talk about like that, I don't know. I wanted him to kind of initiate it. And he did. He's like, yeah, we're going to have to start looking at moving again. He's like, I don't know. And I was blunt with him. I'm like, Pop, you were the impediment on the last one. Like, you had your heels dug in. And he said, yeah, I know. But I'm not going to fight it this time. I know we got to do it. I'm like, okay. Okay. I said, are you guys sure it's Medford? He's like, yeah. Like, your sister moves around. You know, at that time, my sister was still in Arizona. But her job and her husband's job at the time, they were moving pretty often. So for my folks to try and pair up with where they were at would have been pretty tough. It would have been pretty tough. And yeah, so medical facilities here in Medford were a hell of a lot better than what they were getting on the coast. So he said, yeah, we're going to figure it out. He's like, I'm not going to fight it this time. I'm like, okay, all right. So we got done with that camping trip. That was a good one. I always knew as we would pull out of one of those that it could be the last. Didn't expect it to be. You never really expect it to be, but it was. So going into 2020, of course, we all know 2020 was I won't use the F word in this video, but it was a shitty year. It was a beyond shitty year for everybody, but for our family, it was a really shitty year. So COVID hit, of course, and they were trying to sell that house. They had listed it, I want to say, in February of 2020, the one on the coast. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. We needed to rebuild the deck. I don't know if I can find an overhead picture of that on Zillow. If I can, I'll drop it in here. But I want to say it was I think it was May. I think the weather was pretty good. I know that. It might have been April. Whatever it was, we got lucky. For coastal weather, we got damn lucky. I went over there on a Thursday night. Mom and Pop had started pulling the surface boards off, but the understructure was shit. It was there when we got there in 1990, and it had been built with seconds from the mill that the guy worked at in Bandon when it was still open, and it was built in 85. So 85 to 2020 on the coast, yeah, that wood was shot. None of it was PT. It was all just regular fir. Anyhow, they had started peeling the surface boards off, so we had to demo the whole bloody mess out. And that was the first time, honestly, that I realized that Pop was slipping a little bit. Because I got over there, and like I say, Thursday night, when we were sitting there eating a little dinner, it would have been late. I mean, I worked and then went over there, so it had to been 8 o'clock, give or take. And I said, so what's the plan? What do you want to do? Because his house, I would defer those projects to him and then just help as much as I could. And he's thinking, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that far. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing probably, but basically, I was like, oh, shit, we've got 3 days, basically. We got to get a lot of work done. So, I was like, okay, well, I said, we need to demo all that crap out, obviously. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm afraid that all of that understructure is probably shot. I said, well, let's just plan on replacing it. I said, I know it's expensive, but you'll get it back. Okay, yeah, we can do that. I said, any height differences you want to do, anything like that? And I think we changed the set of steps a little bit and simplified that. But, yeah, we demolished that real quick, got all that crap hauled to the dump in a day, and then I set a line level that night around the entire perimeter of where we were going to build. We bought the lumber, and in 3 days we demolished that deck and had it reframed and reposted properly and level. We didn't install a single surface board. They did that on their own after I had gone back home. But yeah, I was pretty proud of that. We busted some serious tail, and like I say, he basically deferred to me on that one. He was obviously doing stuff, but he wasn't running the show, and that was odd. That's a dynamic I was not used to at all. Not one little bit. So, anyway, got it done. They sold the house, started moving stuff down here. They had already bought the house down here before they sold that one. They were lucky that they were able to do that. So we finished up the move, I want to say at the end of May. So that had to have been late April. Because we came in just right at the nick of time getting all their stuff out. So May of 2020, we're in the middle of COVID, all right? My father-in-law, I want to say it was June, he had been dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's. I don't know if it was ever diagnosed, but it took a real bad turn for the worse, real bad. And it got to the point where he couldn't be at home without some help. And the sundown syndrome, any of you that have dealt with somebody with, declining, you know what that is. It got pretty bad, pretty bad. I didn't witness it, but my wife did, and that was pretty hard for her to see, of course. Hard for the whole family. But he was in and out of the hospital. They had tried to do some sort of care facility down here, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was a shithole. They treated him like crap. So he ended up back at home. They had to get a hospital bed in there and all of that. And I don't remember the exact date, but it was shit. Either it was end of July or early August. He passed away. So that was the first time my daughters, they were young still, 2020, so 5 years ago, 8 and 5. Maybe Katie would have just turned 6. So that trip to the funeral home with them, that wasn't a whole lot of fun. Not at all. Never is, but for kids especially, to see their grandfather there, that wasn't great. So we get through that. There was a service at the Catholic Church in the Dalles. That was his favorite place. That was where his primary house was at. He and my mother-in-law didn't live together for a huge chunk of their marriage, and that's why they stayed married. No judgment. Some relationships are like that. So we got through that funeral, got back down here, and then the Labor Day fire. Remember that? We had the incredible east winds, the red flag warnings, and Oregon was on freaking fire. We got through Labor Day, and that was that next day. I want to say it was the 8th of September. I was working from home. I don't remember why. It had to do with COVID. I was just working from home that day, and I was on some meetings, and I remember hearing the chatter about the fire that had started in Ashland, and I thought, well, all right, it's a grass fire. We have those. They'll put it out, whatever. Well, throughout the day, they didn't get it out, and heard about other fires around the state. But I was paying attention to that one, and I think it was along about 2 o'clock when I heard they were evacuating the city of Talent. Okay, that's 2.5 miles down the road. What? And that's when we started taking it a little serious. Like, well, wait a minute. So my wife had grabbed a lot of the kids' stuff together. We got the papers. I was kind of moving some stuff around, keeping an eye on the news. And when they said it had burned through Talent and was on its way to Phoenix, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I went out and I looked to the southeast, essentially, and it's like, oh my God. It was just this giant wall of smoke. You see that on the news when it's out in the middle of a mountain somewhere, but right here in the middle of the valley, yeah. So my wife left with the kids and headed to her mom's house initially, and I stayed behind to load up some more crap into the trailer and hitch up and get out. And it traveled so fast that the flames were about a 1/4 mile away, I would say, when you gonna go?
Are you coming with me?
I hadn't planned on it.
You hadn't planned?
I hadn't planned on it. I'm doing a video.
All right.
About a 1/4 mile away, and the cops were coming down our street with the bullhorns. Evacuate now or you won't be able to. I was ready. It took me a long time to get to my folks' place in southwest Medford, 3 miles away. So, and we thought we were good there. No. Ended up evacuating from there as well. It was only a 1-night evacuation, but I had the trailer hooked to the truck, so we just drove to my mother-in-law's place way the hell on the north side of Medford. And of course the smoke had settled in the valley. It was nasty. And the kids and my wife slept in the mother-in-law's house, and we used the trailer out in front. We were able to get it back home the next day. But we were out of here for almost a week, staying over there. And when I think I worked remotely, I would log into meetings essentially, and just not knowing what was going on. And a lot of my coworkers who had houses that either they couldn't get to in Talent or Phoenix or had lost, there were some that lost them. Thankfully, the campus was able to house them temporarily until, still things got right. Anyway, we went through about a week and a half of that, and it was just as we were getting home. I might have even been the same day when I got back here and started emptying out the freezer full of meat. Power had been off for 7 days. Thank God the power was on for about a day before they let us all back in, so the stuff had refrozen and at least it didn't stink as bad. But so I'm cleaning all that out, and Pop had developed a cough, a real nasty one, and he was coughing up enough junk that my mom made him go to the hospital, and he had pneumonia at that point, which in the middle of the summer was like, okay, that's kind of weird, but we just attributed it to the wildfire smoke. And he smoked for 50 years. He had given it up when he was in his early 70s, but still, that you're bound to do some damage. Anyway, they sent him home on an antibiotic run, and it seemed like that was sort of doing something for a day or two, but then he was coughing up blood, and yeah, it wasn't good. He ended up in the hospital, and they ran a lot more tests and realized that he was suffering from fairly advanced congestive heart failure. I don't remember the exact valve. It would be on the inlet side of the heart, I think. Whatever. He had a leaking valve. It was leaking pretty bad. And I think he was in the hospital for about 7 days before they let him come home. My sister, of course, was in town for that whole thing at that point, and she spent a lot of time at the hospital. I was, back and forth from work, dealing with stuff around here. I obviously went to the hospital, but she was staying there. She and my mom were trading off. She had more conversations with any of the doctors than I ever did, so she had a better idea, I guess, of how bad a shape he was in. And maybe I was just, I don't know. Nothing had ever stopped him. Nothing. Not a damn thing. So I guess I kind of assumed, all right, well, this is another speed bump in the road. He'll be fine. But when they released him, my sister really was adamant about, hey, this is going to go downhill quick. And I didn't believe her. I should have, but I didn't. And, there was just a finality to an awful lot of stuff that I guess I didn't want to accept it. Didn't believe it. Again, nothing had ever stopped him, so I assumed this was no different. So we did a fishing trip up to Hammaker. I've got some pictures of that somewhere. He was using kind of roll around walker, and we set up a nice area for him to sit and cast into that little creek, and he had a hell of a good time. We all had a good time that day, but he was tired, really tired. Slept most of the way back home. So yeah, that would have been the end of September, I think, that we made it up there. And his daily blood pressure log, I don't remember what the last one was. It was some horrendous number. But it kept, the low number, I don't remember which one that is, diastolics, whatever, it doesn't matter. The low one kept creeping. It would get, went from 70 something down into 60 something, down into 50 something. It's like, oh man, that can't be good. He had a doctor's appointment on Friday, November 7th. I'm pretty certain of that date. It would have been the Friday, yeah. And he was full of piss and vinegar that day, fired up. And the doctor was talking about, what maybe could be done. And he was saying something about, we really don't want they had no interest of doing an open chest type surgery at all. But he's like, we've done a lot of these where you can go in through a vein in your leg, try and repair that. And my dad's like, yeah, let's do it. What do I have to lose, And piss and vinegar. He was fired up that day. So we agreed. At the end of that appointment, like, yeah, all right. So it was supposed to be, a couple weeks basically to try and get some scheduling done and figure out, when are we going to do this? So when we got home, he was pretty tired again. He took a nap. I think we had lunch and he took a nap, and that's when I came home. Don't know what I was doing. No idea. Doesn't really matter. Saturday morning, that would have been the 8th. I was watching some YouTube, doing some chainsaw parts on the computer. It was cold and rainy, I remember that. Got a call from Mom right about 8, and she was pretty frantic. It was, you need to get over here now. And I'm like, oh shit, what happened? And at first I'm like, okay, something bad is obviously going on, but it's going to be okay. But I got dressed quick, broke some speed limits heading over there. Now he was gone by the time I got there. He'd gotten up that morning, gone in to use the bathroom, and I think he was pretty winded, and had told them, look, I just need some time to use the bathroom, go get your coffee and all of that. And, he was never diagnosed, or what was the point, but essentially he had a heart attack, and that was it. He had very strict instructions for all of us. He did not want to be resuscitated. He did not want that ordeal. He did not want to be laying in a hospital bed, a vegetable, and all of that sort of stuff. And he had made it clear that he wanted to die at home. And he got that. He got that. So obviously my mom and sister got the brunt of that one. They were there and had to deal with it. I got there after the fact, and it was like, fuck. By the time I got there, the ambulance, the fire truck, and a shit ton of people that, obviously were doing their jobs. When I get in the house, I'm like, God damn. He was in bed. They got him back into bed so that, a little more dignity, I guess. But, yeah. Yeah, so 2020 was an effed year. Completely effed. My kids lost both granddads. So, not great. Not great at all. But, that's life. So I've rambled a hell of a lot longer than I intended to here. For those of you that are still hanging around, I think the message, the takeaway from this that I'm going to throw out there is, no matter how much time you think you have, it's never enough. No matter how good you think a relationship is, it's never going to be quite enough, because when the person is gone, they're gone. And you can think of any number of, God, I wish I'd done that. Wish I'd done that. Probably could have done this. Probably didn't have to do that. I could have, You can replay that shit in your mind all you want. It's not a video game. You don't get to hit rewind. You don't get to go back on the Netflix and have a do-over. Watch it again. You got one shot at doing it. So you've got to be damn certain that shot, all the shots you take, all of the decisions you make, you can be comfortable with. And that probably is what helped me deal with his passing the most. Was the fact that I felt like, all right, we were good. There are things I regret. Yeah, do I wish I had taken my sister's, what I assumed was pessimism at the time, and taken it more seriously? Absolutely. Abso-effing-lutely. But I also know he and I were good. I was proud as hell of him, and I made sure he knew that, and he was proud as hell of me, and he made sure I knew that. That last camping trip, he was, like I say, we got into deep, it wasn't all just yucking up and, being dumb shits. There was a lot of that, and it was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of deep conversations, the kind of stuff where you really connect, and he really, that year, really was keyed in on not wanting to be a burden. And more than once, he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't want to be a burden, you know. You just go fishing. Just, you know, don't worry about it. I'm like, Pop, if you were a burden, I wouldn't be here. If I didn't want to be doing this, I said, I'm not doing this out of an obligation. If I didn't give a shit, I wouldn't be here. So, if it means you don't want to hike your pontoon boat down that steep ass hill and you want us to drive it around to the launch ramp, we're going to drive it around to the launch ramp, because a little bit of diesel doesn't mean diddly squat. So we had several pretty good conversations like that, and yeah, I am satisfied that we ended on very good terms. But that sure doesn't mean that I don't want more. You always want more. So, like I say, for those of you guys that stuck around through this whole long whatever, that's the takeaway. If you are close to somebody in your family, a friend, whatever, do what you can to make the most of that. Because when you can't make any new memories, yeah, that's it. What you've got is what you've got, and you've got to be able to be happy with that and be satisfied with it. You don't want regrets. God damn it, you do not want regrets. That is not, no. That's not how you want to live life. So nowadays, 99.9% of the time, we are, 4.5 years out. 99.9% of the time, it's a laugh, a joke. Oh, that was a good time. Oh, yeah, remember when Pop did this or that, you know. But days like his birthday, say Christmas, Thanksgiving, yeah. It hits a little more. And I know it hit my mom today. We had a few texts back and forth. And I haven't been on Facebook to see, but I'll bet my sister has got something on there too. So there it is. You know a little more about where I came from. And yeah, if he was around to actually get on one of these videos, you would definitely see the acorn didn't fall far from the tree. The nut didn't fall far from the tree. So enough's enough. Pop, wherever you are, whatever comes after this, I hope the fish are biting, the beer is cold, and you're having fun. And it's good. And one of these days, we will all see each other again. I believe that. So, alright, that's enough of this. Next video, we'll have something to do with some chainsaws. Catch you guys in the next one.